on Monday night, the Raiders dropped a really big one on the road at KC, losing 30-29 to the Chiefs. Davante Adams was visibly upset after the game, and he was walking off the field, going toward the exits, going toward the players' locker room or whatnot, and you could see a photographer kind of was kind of running over to get a new spot, and just ran into him at some point, and Davante shoved him to the ground from what we saw, and just kept walking to the locker room. After he fell to the ground, there was reports, as recently as today, that photographer has filed a lawsuit, misdemeanor assault against Davante Adams for whiplash, mild concussion symptoms, and a headache. That's pretty serious stuff. I didn't really see that in the video when I first took a look, but going back, this is a pretty physical dude, probably moving with some sort of force, and you never know what can happen. You don't know what was on the ground, whether that was grass or concrete or something else. But in any case, an issue that's been raised, and we're kind of waiting to see what the NFL is going to do as far as its reaction. But Wayne, what'd you make of this situation?
Yeah, I think I have some mixed feelings a little bit about this. So, Davante has never been in trouble before. Has always been has like a stoic persona, kind of like an Andre Johnson type of demeanor to himself. So, never been in trouble. Best friends with Derek Carr, who is him and of himself. We can talk about him as a player, but he's kind of like a choir boy to that degree. So, that association, it's like, okay, he doesn't seem like a terrible human being or a super aggressive person. He just obviously plays a very violent sport. But he definitely made some plays that kind of led up to this situation on the field, and it was a frustrating loss and all that. So I get all that, and not to say that justifies pushing a photographer. I think he was in the wrong there. I think if the reports are true that, hey, this person got a concussion and everything, went to the hospital and has all of these medical issues now, then it's just one of those things where it's like, okay, Davante's not necessarily a bad guy or anything like that, but he just got caught in a bad situation and made a wrong judgment call in there. So, and that's on him. And then he's probably going to have to pay some money out of there, do some sort of settlement, in the court of law. So. I did like all the memes talking about like, oh yeah, if I got shoved by Davante in that situation, if I'm the photographer, I'm walking around with a neck brace for the next month or something like that, right? So, but hey, this is America. That's what it's all about. If you get shoved or whatever, and I got a backache here now, it's it's all about suing and all that, and getting that cheddar and. Going on a nice vacation afterwards, especially with all this inflation talk and all. So, it's just unfortunate, I think, all around. But to say that Davante is this terrible human being for doing that, that's a hard thing to say, at least in my opinion. But yeah, he definitely did not handle the situation properly.
Yeah, I guess going back to the end of the game, you could kind of see, his call getting reversed. He made a really nice catch where it looked like. Very, very close to having 2 feet in bounds. And that would have been, probably the game clincher at that point. All they really needed was to get into field goal range for Daniel Carlson, who's a pretty good kicker. And that had been it. But it's also more than that. He left the Packers, which is like a perennial playoff team, left a great situation as far as being on the field goes, going back with his college teammate, David Carr, is a really good friend. And they're off to a 1-4 start. And, you could just see how pissed he was. He threw his helmet on the sideline after that catch was, that call was reversed and they lost the game. So obviously he wasn't in the right state of mind, number one. I think, like you were saying, I don't think the intent was there. He didn't intentionally, walk in a situation looking for somebody to push onto the ground. It wasn't like that was calculated by any means. It just kind of was like the spur of the moment thing where, unfortunately it happened. And I think the biggest thing for me is I guess watching it back through is Davante just kind of keeps walking. And it's kind of like that carelessness that I think really would make me upset if, number one, I was the guy who got pushed to the ground. But I also like watching it as a spectator. I was like, oh, man, that's pretty cold. I understand if somebody walks in front of you and you're pissed off or whatever. Personally, I wouldn't push anybody out of my way. That's just not – I don't see a situation where I'm like, hey, I'm going to push you out of my way. And it kind of felt like an exertion of power in a lot of ways. Like, hey, I'm this big bad receiver, and I make millions of dollars, and you're nothing, so I'm gonna dispose of you as quickly as I can, so I can get back to my locker room and stuff. So there is that element to it where I kind of like dissecting the actual issue. There's things that kind of go through my head when I watch that situation out, but exactly like you're saying. I mean, if this guy's not really hurt, I would hate to see Davante get slapped like an actual misdemeanor assault. I mean, that's pretty heavy, for what, maybe this was all about. But I also look at the other side and I say, what if you were that guy? What if you were the guy who got pushed to the ground on live TV and they're doing nothing but replaying that back thousands and thousands of times? It's in articles, it's everywhere. Your friends know about it now. Your family knows about it. All your coworkers know about it. I mean, that's going to follow that guy for a while. You're the guy who got pushed by Davante Adams in his own personal life. So I'd be pissed off. I'd want to, seek anything to repair, the damage that it caused, and make sure it never happens to anybody else on the sidelines. I think he was just trying to do his job, and he was he got, put in the wrong place at the wrong time. So I think Davante's a good person. I don't think he ever meant to do it. He apologized right afterwards. It seems like he did it all over the place. I don't know if he ever said anything to the guy himself, but it's hard, man. Like you said, I think overall Dennis Rodman got a couple of games for kicking, a side photographer back in the Bulls, second three-peat. I think a game was probably, necessary at this point, or, we'll have to see. But I didn't like the situation, but I don't think he deserves to carry any sort of offenses on a criminal record or anything like that.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I definitely get it's like this whole power dynamics. Like, he is the athlete. He's the one with the money. He gets all the attention. And then this photographer just kind of came almost out of nowhere. He was kind of like running to do something or get something or something. I don't know exactly, but yeah, definitely walked in front of him and all that. But then like shoving him, that's not good, man. So. And then it's like, I definitely just think that Davante deserves some sort of punishment of some sort, whether fine or suspension or something, I guess. Sure, I don't know what the the going rate is for hitting photographers in that sense. I definitely think it's like sometimes with athletes, like was it that TV show The Boys, right? I don't know if you ever watched that. But there was like that one scene or one part of the TV series where it's like the really fast athlete, I forget his name, but like runs over a spouse of one of the characters there and just kills them, like obliterates them into like a bloody pulp, right? And then it's like their hands are just showing. It's like he's like holding her hands, and then she's like not there anymore. So like kind of like very, very violent and gutsy and all that. Anyway, I think the idea was that was like, oh, he just like walked up to him later. Like, I think they offered him like a couple of that, like tens of thousands of dollars. And then he just like walked up there and said sorry or something like that, like afterwards. And that was it. It's like, okay, that's great and all, but you just ruined this person's life in a way. Who knows exactly, again, not a medical expert, not in that situation, but who knows what happens to this photographer. How they landed, did he get a concussion? I don't know. I'm not a doctor, and I'm just reading what I guess we're seeing reported, I guess, in the news there. But it's obviously like there has to be some sort of retribution. I think that goes towards Davante, and then also to the photographer of the situation. So
yeah, I mean, I'm reading that it could come with up to 6 months in jail sentence if he was actually charged with this. I mean, I feel like that's a little stiff. Obviously, I mean, I don't think any jail time is warranted in this situation, but in the same sense, it's like, it's how serious this stuff is. I mean, you just can't put hands on people, and I'm not for like violence. I don't think you should get like any get off the hook in any sort of way that's beneficial to Davante. I mean, he should face some sort of consequence that's actually a bit painful for him. But in any sense, I hope the photographer freelancer got pushed. Can get better through the situation, whether it's physically or, I think more or less it's emotionally, mentally, something like that. But we'll have to see. But in any case, just a crazy incident at the end of a very good game.
Yeah, and I hope he like sincerely reaches out to him, like have his people or talk to his people or the photographer. Like if he's a photographer for the NFL, for the Chiefs or whoever, it's like there's got to be a way for him to get in contact with the photographer directly, right? And hopefully there is some sort of like amends for both their sake. I feel like so. Yeah,
for sure. Before we move on, there is one tweet that I wanted to read to you that actually came from Robert Griffin III about Draymond and Davante. I want to get your reaction here, but he goes, Davante Adams pushing someone down and Draymond punching his teammate were wrong. But let's focus our attention on Brett Favre and the evil of stealing millions from the poorest people in our country in Mississippi. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I know there's been this conversation about Brett Favre too. It's like, how come he's getting a pass or isn't getting as much coverage, I guess, as some of these other people? It's like, well, I don't know. I can think of a couple of reasons why. In a way, it's Brett Favre. Like even John Mantle loved him and everything. So, yeah, I think it is crazy that these stuff that it's not as sexy, I think, is the key thing. Like it's hard to tangibly think about economics. Like it's one of those classes you take in college or whatever. It's like, okay, whatever, that this has no effect in my life, but it actually does in terms of your overall well-being, your health too, like your socioeconomical status, all that has an effect on your everyday life and how long you live, how well you live, what kind of schools your kids go to, all that. So it doesn't get the catchy headlines as crazy, even during this whole, economic times where everybody hates rich people, right? Hey, that's fair game sometimes. It just doesn't get as many headlines, I think, in the NFL world, just because, it's not as cool as like a violent punch or, to a photographer, and not as memeable, I think, is the key thing in that sense. There's actually some pretty good economic means there, but I do agree with Robert Griffin III there. Things like I even saw like some photographers actually almost kind of come to the defense to Davante Adams in a way, which I'm like, really? Okay, I guess. But it's things like economics and him trying to steal from like rich people and or from poor people in Mississippi. It's like, what are you doing? Like just for like volleyball? Like is it really worth it? Are you thinking about the big picture? I almost feel like it's the whole was it Warrior Laughlin type of thing, right? It's just like you guys have anything better to do, or how about just give money directly towards the families a little bit, support the community better. So yeah.
This is a clear white versus black type portrayal in the media. Not to defend Davante, Draymond for their separate incidents, but in the same sense, it's like, Brett Favre just gets completely swept under the rug because, like you said, it's Brett Favre. And, stealing money from a welfare fund in Mississippi, which is already the poorest state in this country. And there's a long litany of, program funds that were brought down from federal levels to the state that have never been dispersed to, their overwhelmingly black communities. And for this guy to kind of stick his hands in there with others to kind of pull from like a food assistance fund and other, means that, provide people like the bare minimum in that state, all for what you're saying, like funding a volleyball court, speaking appearances that he never made, the time to go to. And there was, another professional wrestler who was also involved in this as well, getting, paid under the table. I think he got a couple million out of it, but it's just like, at some point it's like, I think people get to this level of success and level of fame in their lives, and it just like completely drives them to do whatever they think they can do. And they just know they'll get away with it. And it sucks that, ESPN hasn't picked this one up. I don't really know why, it hasn't been, trumpeted on every single week since it came out. And, we'll see where this all goes. And maybe we do our own separate segment on this, but same sense, I just wanted to bring that out because of, just seeing it. And, glad that RG3 actually said something in his own platform. And it just sucks, man.
Yeah. I think needs to happen is Brett Favre needs to punch somebody in order for anybody to care, apparently. So I don't know. Something needs to be done about that. But, it is nice that it is getting some, but it's like, compared to this onslaught media coverage of, Draymond and Davante, it's like, come on, man. Like, okay, we know that these are incidents that happen. They happen pretty frequently. It's you're playing aggressive games and everything. So I get it. Is it cool? Is it, are we justifying it? No, but should we also at the same time be justifying anything that Brett Favre's doing, and what his actions are doing is impacting not just like, one or two people. It's impacting, potentially hundreds or thousands of people and everything, right? So it's like there's got to be some sense of impact in how, the actions of an individual with a platform and economic means. What are they doing with it? If they're, spitting on the downtrodden, trying to get volleyball courts up for their, their offspring. Okay, great. Is that what you're doing with your platform? Versus, things that Draymond's been doing with his charity work, with his, giving back to the community. Davante, the same thing too. It's kind of like how a lot of sometimes people treat Marshawn Lynch, right? Marshawn, sometimes he can be very, not friendly to the media as much, right? Sure, he does the cutesy things like with Skittles or whatever, but every Thanksgiving, at least to my knowledge, like he would always go back to his neighborhood and give out turkeys. And I think he even invited like Richard Sherman to do that, and he did. So it's like that's it doesn't get always the limelight because I think we're in a very reactionary culture where we just gravitate towards people punching each other in locker rooms or in the courts for practice and stuff like that. But we don't care as much about economical means and helping each other out, because I feel like we're all just trying to get each other in some sort of rat race, right? So that's I think my opinion on that. It's like I think we need to do better, but I feel like it's because we don't think ourselves is better as much. I think we gravitate towards the rat race, and that's all. So yeah, it's just one of those unfortunate things, I think.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not like fueled by violence, greed, sex, in a lot of ways, it just doesn't sell, and it sucks, man. But overall, just we'll see where this goes with all parties, Favre included. I'd love to see how this turns out. I know he's been quoted as pointing to this being fake news, which is always a great approach. I mean, it worked for somebody used to be in high power in this country, so it's just like go figure.